All right, welcome to our hybrid meeting. Participants in the room, please do not join the meeting in Zoom. Virtual participants, if you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. Members attending virtually, if you are able, please activate your video for purposes of quorum and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you are able, please activate your video when you are speaking. Members of the committee, when you wish to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote, please push the person button on your microphone or raise your hand virtually. Those in the room will have their microphones turned on when they are recognized to speak. Those attending virtually can unmute themselves when recognized. When you are finished, all should mute themselves. Members of the public who have registered to speak, those appearing virtually, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. If you are here in person, when you are called to speak, approach one of the two podiums on either side of the dais and you will be recognized. For all registrants, the clerk will tell you when your time is up. After all public speakers, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the committee, please send it to the email listed on today's agenda. Thanks. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Just a couple notes. All applications that we talk about and approve today will go to the Common Council meeting of February 11th, 2025. This meeting is governed by Robert's Rules of Order. All speakers wishing to speak, all speakers wishing to address the committee regarding an agenda item must first complete a registration form and submit it to the city clerk designee or online. Speakers may speak to the committee only after they're called by the chair. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. After speaking to the committee, please take your seat in the gallery or mute yourself on Zoom. The public is not allowed to address or respond to speakers or committee members unless they've been recognized by the chair of the committee. Jim, do we have any notified absences today?
We do not.
Thank you. And if we could do the roll call, that'd be awesome.
Sure. Alder Martinez Rutherford.
Present.
Alder Martinez Rutherford is here. Alder Revere.
Here.
Alder Revere is here. Mr. Bruchuk. Here. Mr. Bruchuk is here. Ms. Farley.
Present. I'll have my camera on shortly.
Yeah, Ms. Farley's here. Ms. Westra.
Here.
Ms. Westra's here. Alder Knox.
I'm here.
Alder Knox is here. And Ms. Carter.
Ms. Carter said she will be late.
Okay, sounds good. Chair, we do have quorum.
Excellent. So as of 5:40 p.m. on Wednesday, January 15th, I call this meeting to order. First up is approval of minutes from December 18th, 2024 Operator Subcommittee and the approval of minutes of the December 18th, 2024 ALRC meeting.
I move to approve both.
And I see a second from Alder Martinez Rutherford. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, the minutes are approved. Jim, do we have any registrants for public comment?
We do not.
Okay, thank you. At this time, members of the body should make any required disclosures or recusals under the city's ethics code. Does anyone have anything they need to bring forward for that? Seeing none, moving on to the presentation of the consent agenda. Jim, if you can do the read off the consent agenda for us, that would be awesome.
Sure. So the proposed consent agenda for ALRC meeting January 15th, 2025, recommended council to grant change of agent item number 3, entity reorganization item number 5, and business name change item number 6.
Committee, are there any questions or removals from the consent agenda? Seeing none, what is your pleasure? Colin?
I move approval of the consent agenda with the recommendations as listed.
And do we have a second? Ms. Farley, is that you with your hand raised?
Second, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, those items are approved. If you could officially read the consent agenda of what we just did. Thank
Sure.
you.
So the approved consent agenda for ALRC meeting January 15th, 2025. Recommended council to grant. Item number 3, change of agent, Madison Operating LLC. Item number 5, entity reorganization, Monona Catering LLC. And item number 6, business name change for Moss Espa LLC.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any items tonight that require interpretation?
We do. We have 2 items requiring interpretation. I think they're.
Yep, number
8 and 9.
And item number 9. So we will take those up first. First up is agenda item number 8, public hearing, new license for Taco Madre LLC, doing business as Taco Madres at 2827 Atwood Avenue. Agent Jose Vicente Zuhuka for this. And who do we have here?
Ricardo Avera is registered and in person. And
Jose and Ricardo are here, but Jose
Okay.
is the owner.
okay, then just if you can tell Jose to register after the.
Okay. And I'll let you do your.
Yeah, interpreter, have you raise your right hand? You affirm you will accurately interpret English to Spanish and Spanish to English?
I do.
Excellent, thank you.
Which one? That's, the podium is.
Yeah, that one.
That one. Okay, there we go. Great. Hello, welcome to the committee. If you could introduce yourself and let us know what your plan is for your business and the liquor license you're applying for.
Y para la licencia de alcohol que está solicitando. O sea, preséntese y el plan que tiene para el negocio y para la licencia.
Yo soy, mi nombre es Ricardo, yo soy el manager del restaurante.
Closer to the microphone.
This one's José Secua Méndez. Estamos aplicando para la licencia para las margaritas.
My name is Jose Secua, and we are applying for the alcohol license for the margaritas.
Okay. Committee, do we have any questions for the applicant?
¿Alguien tiene alguna pregunta para el solicitante?
So I guess my first question is, have you met with the alder of the district?
¿Se ha reunido con el concejal del su distrito? ¿Ha tenido una reunión con el concejal, con el alder?
No.
Obviamente.
Not yet.
Okay. Have you reached out to them at all?
¿Se ha comunicado con él? ¿Le han mandado un mensaje o algo?
Le llamamos y le dejamos un mensaje, pero no tuvimos contacto.
We called and we left a message, but we have not been able to contact him.
Okay. And have you had a public hearing, I'm sorry, have you had a neighborhood meeting and reached out to the neighborhood
¿Han tenido
association?
una reunión con el barrio o se han comunicado con la asociación de vecinos del barrio?
No pusimos el letrero correspondiente en la ventana y no obtuvimos respuesta. Dejamos el teléfono.
We put the sign as it should be on the door, but nobody has reached to us. Our phone number is there, but we have not heard from anyone.
Okay, did you schedule a neighborhood meeting?
¿Organizaron una reunión
Or a
del
time for
vecindario?
people to come in and talk to you?
Sí, pusimos la fecha y la hora en el letrero que nos proveyeron.
Yes, we left a date and an hour on the sign that you provided us.
Okay, what was the date and hour? Do you
¿Cuál
remember
era,
what the
recuerda
date?
cuál era la fecha que habían puesto y la hora?
Habíamos puesto... no me recuerdo exactamente el día. Pero era un día miércoles a las 3 de la tarde. Pero la fecha exacta no la recuerdo.
I don't exactly remember the date, but I know it was a Wednesday at 3 p.m.
Okay, committee, other questions? Mr. Burshak?
Hi, thanks for coming. So I'm looking at your application. Am I right that you're saying you plan to be open from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Thursday and then until midnight on Friday and Saturdays?
Hasta jueves y hasta la medianoche los viernes y sábados.
Estábamos planeando poner un bar, pero el espacio, no la condición. Entonces, el bar que tenemos ahora es de 4 sillas. Decidimos abrir de 10 a 10 todos los días. El plan original era a las 12 porque iba a haber bar, pero ya no hay.
¿De 10 de lunes a domingo o lunes a sábado?
De lunes a domingo va a ser de 10 a 10.
Okay. Yeah, we were having a plan to have a bar there, but we don't have the space because we basically only have 4 chairs. So finally, we decided that the opening hours would be from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. all the days, every day.
Okay, thank you. And food will be available the whole time?
Yes, all the time.
Thank you. No further questions.
Alder Martinez Rutherford.
I was just gonna make a comment, and I don't feel like that's in order right now.
Okay. Are there any other questions for the applicant? Alder Revere.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome back to the committee. I wanted to ask the applicants, do they plan to have this new restaurant be very similar to the other restaurants that they own and operate in downtown Madison? That's the first question.
Este es la tercera.
A la Brasa, for those that aren't familiar.
Va a ser exactamente igual. Tiene el mismo menú de bebidas y de comida.
Yeah, it's going to be the same kind of project. It will have this is our 3rd project, so it will be the same menu both in food and in drinks.
Tuvimos la oportunidad de trabajar con
Very good. And so both restaurants on Bassett and Broome Street respectively will remain open? Following this will be your 3rd restaurant, and so you'll keep all three operating?
I missed your question because I was listening to the applicants.
Sure.
He mentioned. Just let me add something that they told me. We were planning to work with a different cook, but that didn't work out, and that's why we are keeping with the same menu. And sorry, Alder Revere, can you repeat your question now?
Oh, no apology necessary. Absolutely. I was just curious if the applicants plan to keep their 2 downtown restaurants open and operating for the foreseeable future on Bassett and Broome Streets, respectively.
Si tienen pensado seguir con los otros 2 negocios abiertos en el
Van a trabajar en horario normal.
Yes, they will be working on their normal hours of operation.
Very good. I was just a little bit concerned that they might be closing one of their downtown restaurants to move to the Atwood Avenue location. So happy to hear that there'll actually be 3 restaurants then that the family will own.
Sí.
Okay.
I have no further questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Knox.
I guess I'm looking at the amended application, and I'm talking to the owner. You had said to the first question that you would be open 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Friday. Is that correct?
¿Es correcto eso?
Se cambió el plan para seguir como los otros 2 negocios.
Yes, but we changed the plan just to open the same as the other businesses.
So what is the other business?
He mentioned 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. That's their new plan.
So I know on the amended application it has Friday, Saturday to 12 a.m. So is that not the case?
No, it will be every single day of the week, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. So not until midnight any day.
Okay, thank you. Staff, will they have to amend that, or will that? Do they just go ahead and operate on those hours? Chair, anybody?
Jim, can you answer that question? So they're going to be open only till 10 p.m. instead of 12 a.m. like was on their application on Friday and Saturday.
Yeah, they can just make that change on the record. The application doesn't hold them to those hours. Only a condition on the license would hold them to specific hours.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Are there any other?
No more questions.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? I guess I have one. So I'm looking at your amended application. The, oh, I may be wrong. So we have that you guys had the information session posted. You reached out to the alder, but the alder did not contact you back.
Le hicimos una llamada y no obtuvimos respuesta.
Yeah, we made a call. Dejaron un mensaje, dijo.
No dejamos ningún mensaje de voz.
Okay.
Hicimos llamadas solamente.
Okay, we made a call, but we didn't hear back, but we didn't left any messages, any voicemails. No dejaron mensaje de voz entonces.
No llamamos solamente.
Yeah, we just called. We didn't leave any messages.
Okay, so if we called the alder but didn't leave them a message, I don't necessarily view that we contacted the alder.
Dejaron un mensaje, no sé, podemos certificar, no podemos definir que contactaron con el concejal.
And then my next question is about the contacting the neighborhood association. Did you contact the neighborhood association, receive a response back from them?
Con la asociación de vecinos, ¿recibieron alguna respuesta de ellos?
Una persona que se llamaba Ángela Puerta dijo que ella iba a estar en contacto con nosotros en un futuro para una reunión, pero nunca se dio.
Okay. We talked to Angela Puerta. She works for the city. I don't know, I guess you know her. And she said that she was going to be in touch with us for a meeting, but that never happened. You know Angela? She works for city planning.
For city planning, but that's not the neighborhood association. So Atwood has a very strong neighborhood association.
Muy fuerte.
So I would expect them to be contacted.
Esperaba que los hubieran contactado.
And then did you contact the police
Contactaron
department
con
district
el
captain?
Capitán de policía de esa zona.
Ellos estuvieron en el restaurante.
Yes, they were present at the restaurant.
Okay, and what did the police district captain have to say about your
Que decir, tenía
license
que decir
and request?
El restaurante, el policía tenía algo que decir sobre su solicitud de licencia.
No nos dio respuesta sobre la licencia en concreto. Ese voy para chequear el lugar.
Todo bien.
Yo no pasé, sí.
Yeah, we didn't talk about the license in particular. He was then checking the place and everything seemed fine.
Okay. Alder Martinez Rutherford.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I am the alder, and I did speak to someone and told them that they needed to contact the neighborhood association. As long as they contact the Sassy Neighborhood Association, from my conversation and the email chain between the chief, I felt like the only concern was the hours. So as long as they get in touch with the Sassy Neighborhood Association, I don't have any concerns. If that's helpful.
Sí, él
Okay.
habló- él habló conmigo.
Yes. So you talked to someone.
With him,
Okay.
with Ricardo.
Okay. Captain Kamowski.
Capitán.
Él me dio el número de donde salió.
Sure, I'll just reiterate what Alder Martinez Rutherford said. That was the concern, was those later hours that they were initially proposing. And I believe that since those hours have been amended, that was the issue of concern, so there would not be a concern on the police department's end.
Okay. Are there any more questions for the applicant?
Pregunta más para los solicitantes.
Okay, seeing none,
Ninguna respuesta.
you guys can go have a seat.
Pueden sentarse.
And are there any questions for city staff? We'll call you back up if we need to have a question for you. Alder Verveer.
Yep, thank you. My apologies, but it just occurred to me another question I'd like to
Yeah,
pose to the applicants, please.
Is there a way to get hold on one second. Is there a way to get the volume in the room up higher? I could barely hear some others. And Mike, if you're talking, I can't hear you.
Thank you, Chair. Is this any better?
Nope.
Just one moment. I'm going to,
Okay.
if Sherry can do something about that. So it sounds like levels are good on our end, but it might be Alder Revere's connection or audio levels.
Okay. Mike, can you say something, please?
Is this any better?
Yeah, we heard you before, and now you're super quiet. Can we just do a quick round robin of the alders on Zoom to see what we're hearing? Alder Knox?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hello? Is that okay?
Yep, you're good. Alder Martinez Rutherford, can you just say something one more time?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're low sounding too,
I am.
but I can still hear you. Revere, unfortunately,
Is this any better? Hello? Testing.
I will
It's
say
very-
he's lower for me too than he was earlier.
yeah.
So Sherry is recommending to maybe try disconnecting your device and reconnecting it, your audio device.
So to be clear, nobody can hear me now?
Now we can.
Oh. I haven't touched my computer at all during that whole moment, so it's just an act of God. So what I was attempting to request, Chair, is if the applicant could return for one more question that just occurred to me, please.
Yep, if you guys could come on up.
Yep, we're here.
Thank you. So correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the former Daisy Cafe space, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. And Daisy Cafe, at least since COVID, did use their outdoor area for a continuation of their licensed premise. On the application, it states that there's no desire to serve alcohol outdoors at all. Is that correct? There's no plans for any outdoor seating whatsoever here?
No, limpiamos todo lo que estaba afuera ya.
No, we cleaned everything that was outside already.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't understand.
No, they don't have any plans. They cleared everything that was outside.
Okay, so there will be no service whatsoever outdoors.
No, not whatsoever.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Occurred to me too, I'll just add, I have no further questions, but occurred to me if we also could correct on the record the application where it states what the former license premise was at the location.
I have one question for Attorney McReynolds.
Just out of curiosity, can you still hear me? So for question number 11 on the application?
Yes.
Okay, great. You'll let me know if you aren't hearing me.
Yep.
So we'll correct question 11 on the record. Correct, Deputy City Clerk?
Correct.
Great, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Attorney McReynolds, since the Neighborhood Association was not contacted for this license, what would be your recommendation in regards to the process here today.
Yeah. So the application that they submitted, they checked that they agreed to contact them prior to this meeting, and that didn't happen. So my recommendation when any of these steps are not followed is to refer to the next meeting to allow that to happen.
Okay, thank you. Committee, are there any other questions for staff or anything like that today? If not, what is your pleasure? Ms. Farley?
Yes, I'd like to move to the next regular scheduled meeting with the request that the applicant follow up with the neighborhood community. As well as I think they needed to contact the alder, is that right?
The alder's talked to
Was
them.
on the call.
Yep, yeah, who was on the call with us today. Alder Knox, did you have a second, or did you have a question or a motion?
I have a second.
Okay, Alder Revere.
Yep. Thank you. Just one thought, and I absolutely will go along with the recommendation of the alder of the district here. But one other option, rather than delaying our action by a whole month and then several more weeks for this to go before the city council in March at that point, would be if Alder Martinez Rutherford is aware when the next SASE meeting might be. One option could be that we make our recommendation this evening with the understanding that the applicant would appear before the next meeting of SASE, if indeed that meeting would be before when this item would be scheduled to go to the city council, which is on February 11th. So I was just wondering if Alder Martinez Rutherford knows, is SASE planning to meet between now and February 11th? And if so, is that a potential option, or would you be more comfortable referring this back to us in a month's time?
I will say that I believe that their next scheduled meeting is on the 13th. So it would be after the 11th.
Okay, so on February 13th.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Then I guess that won't work. Thank you.
Ms. Farley?
Their website says the February 13th is the next meeting.
I'll just add that technically they wouldn't have to necessarily wait until March if they wanted to get the license issued provisionally after the next ALRC meeting, which would be February 19th. So it's a couple weeks saved, but yeah.
So right now, we have a motion to refer this to the next meeting of the ALRC so the applicant can fulfill their application duties to have a meeting with the neighborhood association. And we have a second on that. Do we have any other discussion around that point? Mr. Bruchek?
Yeah, I'm opposed to this motion. I think we've enforced this provision very inconsistently. And I don't see where in the ordinance it requires anything of us. It reads as if it requires something of the applicant. So I'm opposed because I think it's been enforced by this body inconsistently, and I'll be voting no. Thanks.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, let's just do a roll call.
I'm sorry, could you repeat what the motion is?
The motion is to refer to the next meeting of the ALRC. So the February meeting.
Alder Martinez Rutherford?
I will vote yes.
Alder Martinez Rutherford, aye. Alder Revere?
Aye.
Alder Revere, aye. Ms. Rushek? Ms. Rushek, no. Ms. Farley?
Aye.
Ms. Farley, aye. Alder Knox?
Aye.
Alder Knox, aye. And that looks like yes. Chair, the vote is 4 ayes and 1 no.
Okay, so this motion passes. This item is referred to the next meeting of the ALRC. Thank you very much. Up next, item number 9, public hearing, new license. Saber y Tradicion Incorporated, doing business as Big Sur Cantina at 7436 Mineral Point Road. Agent Humberto Macias, for a Class B combination liquor and beer license. If you could introduce yourself and tell us what you're doing over there at the Big Sur Cantina.
Okay, mi nombre es Humberto Macías y prácticamente lo que estoy haciendo es cambiar de corporación y en ese restaurante porque compramos el restaurante y solamente vamos a cambiar de corporación. Yo estaba allí desde que abrimos, pero ahora es una nueva asociación y solamente estoy cambiando la corporación.
Yes, my name is Humberto Macias, and what I'm planning to do is make a change in the corporation because we bought that restaurant and we have changed the corporation, but I have been there at the restaurant since we opened.
Looking a couple things up real quick. Ms. Farley, while I'm
Yeah, point of information, would this be considered a new license or would this be like an entity reorganization?
This is a new license because it's a new LLC that's taking over.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll just go through the general questions that we've been trying to do. Did you have an information session for this new license?
Una reunión de información con los vecinos.
Sí, yo llamé, me mandaron ese correo y Ángela y también llamé al 262, pero escribí correos y me dice que esa dirección no tiene vecindario activo.
Okay. Yeah, I received a message from Ángela Puerta to contact a number, but what they told me is that address doesn't have an active neighborhood association.
Okay, so there's the contacting the neighborhood association, so there's no active one over there, and then there's the date and time that you posted on your sign for your information session.
Sí. Puse el cartelón con la fecha.
¿Cuál era la fecha y la hora? ¿Recuerda?
4 de enero de 12 del mediodía hasta cerrar.
Yeah, it was posted on the premises, and it was on January 4th from noon until close time.
Okay, did anyone attend?
¿Llegó alguien? No, nobody showed up.
And did you contact the alder of the district?
¿Contacto con el concejal del distrito?
¿Con el teniente?
El concejal. ¿El alder?
Con el alder. Yo ya, aquí está. Permítame. Me mandaron con el distrito 9 y aquí mandé el correo.
Okay. Yeah, they sent me with District 9, and I have here like an email with an email address for Nikki Conklin. And I sent a message to that email address.
Okay. And did you hear from the alder at all? Or have any conversations? Just sent the email? Okay.
Solo el email. Yeah, just the email. No,
Okay.
no conversations.
And did you contact the police department district captain?
El capitán de la policía.
Sí, hablé con el capitán que estaba en el formato, ya no está. Entonces hablé con otro, se llama el capitán. I
talked to the one that was referred to me, but he was no longer there, so I talked to, trying to remember the name,
Captain Patton.
Captain Patton.
Okay, great, thank you. Ms. Farley?
So just to be clear, this is an existing establishment. Are you planning on making any changes to the business?
Sorry, I didn't hear the last part of your question.
Are you planning on making any changes to Big Sur Cantina as it exists today?
¿Tiene planeado hacer algún cambio a Big Sur Cantina tal como está hoy? No, no changes.
Okay,
And
thank you.
it's an active establishment, yeah.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, you guys can go have a seat. That would be great. Alder Knox.
Yeah, I'm not sure I heard his response to, did he talk to the captain?
Yes.
And what did the captain say? I guess I'd like to know. What did you guys talk about?
Okay. So I'll have them come back up.
Just ask me if everything was gonna keep going as usual or if there were gonna be any changes.
Okay. And he was satisfied with your responses?
Yes.
Dijo que no tenía más preguntas.
Yeah, he said that he didn't have any other questions.
So you're saying in terms of the
Everything was fine for him on his end.
all right, but there was no neighborhood meeting or anything like that.
Hubo reunión con los vecinos o algo así.
Ah, no, nada más el correo que recibí. No fue nadie no fue nadie a preguntar nada.
No, nobody came to the meeting that was scheduled.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Ms. Farley.
If it's appropriate to do so, I'd like to move to grant.
Okay, let me have them go sit down and, so we have a motion on the floor to grant. Second for Mr. Bruchak. Any discussion, questions for staff, any of that right now for this? Okay, any objections to approval? Seeing none, item 9 is approved. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, since all items have, that require interpretation have been dealt with, we move back to item number 2. We'll take up item number 2 and item number 4. Which is a change of agent and an entity reorganization for Walnut Hollow ENT LLC, doing business as the Plaza Tavern and Grill at 319 North Henry Street. Jim, do we have any registrants for these items?
Yeah, item number 2, Erica DeRosa is registered in support, and item number 4, Ian Miller is registered in support. And Erica's here in person, and Ian is on Zoom.
Okay.
And Erica is the agent for this, so for
Okay,
both of them.
so Erica, if you could come up here and introduce yourself and just let us know what you're planning to do over at the plaza.
My name is Erica DeRosa, and we plan to continue business as usual at the plaza.
Committee, are there any questions for the applicant for these entity and change of agent? Oh, Mr. Bruchak, sorry.
Thanks for coming tonight. So what's your position there?
I'm general manager.
Okay. And how long have you worked?
Since 2000.
Okay. Have you noticed anything with the trends? Every meeting we have, we get information from the Madison Police about their efforts to prevent underage drinking and things like that. What are you seeing at the plaza with respect to fake
I
IDs?
think it's been a really big challenge for us, but we have stepped up. We got the IntelliCheck, and now everybody's IDs are. We got IntelliCheck on the recommendation of the police who looked at Patron Scan and IntelliCheck and said IntelliCheck is better at catching fake IDs.
Okay,
So
that's excellent. No further questions from me. Thanks again.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, any discussion? Ms. Carter?
Yes. Does Captain Angela has any additional information on this application?
no. Present to me.
Okay, thank you.
I'm
This
so
is for the
sorry.
captain,
I'm
yep.
so sorry.
No, I do not. I was not contacted by anybody at the plaza about this entity reorg. I know it's not required. So the first I knew of it was when it was on the agenda. We have not had large concerns at that establishment. And as you know, as we talked last time about the different tavern safety inspections that the Central CPT has done. And so I'm glad to hear that they got IntelliCheck and are trying to do some due diligence on combating that issue.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Are there any more questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing none, I'll let you go have a seat. This should be quick. Alder Revere.
Thank you. I wanted to give Ian Miller the same opportunity as Erica to just share with the committee his vast experience at the Plaza Tavern.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. I forgot that we had a second. Ian, if you could bring Ian forward and just introduce yourself and let us know what you're doing over there.
Hi, is my microphone on? I don't know if I have the video on, but can you guys hear me?
Yep, your mic's on, you're good.
Okay, yeah. I've been working since the late 90s at the Plaza. So I've been an integral part of a family establishment that I think is beyond like just the Huss family who originally owned it and was taken over by Dean. And Eric and I have worked with all of them, and we want to keep the spirit of the Plaza alive, the food alive for everyone, because we see generations of people that come into the Plaza, and we just want to keep that rolling and be part of the community.
Excellent. Thank you. Are there any questions for Ian? See none. Are there any questions or discussion with staff, for staff? Alder Revere.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to confirm with Deputy City Clerk Verbic, since this is technically not a new license, simply in essence, the sale of the business. Are there any, number one, are there any conditions on their existing license? And if so, those would continue under a motion to grant, correct?
I'd have to look, but if there were, they would continue.
The only condition I can think of would be the no new entry after 1:30 on weekends, but when the Central District Community Policing Team recommended that condition to all establishments many years ago now, I don't know that it extended all the way to the 300 block of North Henry Street. Maybe one of the applicants, looks like Ian is still with us in Zoom. Or if Erica wants to come back. Are there any conditions on your existing license, folks?
We don't have any conditions listed on our system.
Oh, okay, very good. Yeah, I was thinking that the 130 issue doesn't go that far. But Ian or Erica, why don't you just explain what you've been I've had several conversations with my friends. So I'll disclose that I consider both of the applicants my friends because I've known them for so many decades. Why don't you just briefly share with us how you all handled the issues of crowds attempting to come into your establishment on weekend late nights?
Absolutely.
Even though you don't technically have the legal condition.
We do not technically have a legal condition, but we do abide by what State Street does. And at 1:30, we do not allow any new people to come into the bar. We also have 2 security outside from midnight to 1:30 on Friday and Saturday night. And we also have barricades set up so that when a rush of people does come, they have to stand in line, and it has really helped. I talk to police officers pretty much every single weekend. We are out there. And it has it helped. It is very well, very well.
And I would follow up with that with a question, just like I would assume that if people are leaving and they can't get back in on State Street, then they're trying to find the next establishment.
They are trying to find the next establishment, and that is what happened to us when the 1:30 was put in place for the rest of State Street. We were literally overwhelmed and needed to respond quickly to the change, and we're not aware that everybody else had a stipulation. And so, but we have barricades. I don't know why a 5-pound barricade and a plastic rope makes everybody stand in line, but it does. I don't know. I don't know.
Conditioning.
Yeah, conditioning. So we are trying to do what we can to make downtown a fun and safe place to be. Yeah.
Mr. Bruchek.
So I looked up the license when the question was raised about conditions. It happens to say that the premises consists of entire restaurant, 3 storage areas, and a small ice cream shop.
It did have an ice cream shop, but we closed the ice cream shop on March 3rd, 2003.
Okay, so long before I came to this city.
I have no idea. I don't want to judge.
Thank you. No further questions.
We have 2 doors. We technically have 2 addresses, where 219 is what we do business as, and 220 is the ice cream shop. It had been there in the 30s. It had candy, popcorn, shakes and malts. I worked over there on Saturday days when I was in college. I sat there and made shakes and malts and watched soap operas and made popcorn.
I'm a Madison lifer, and I don't ever remember that. I remember 4-Star Video being right next door.
On the other side, absolutely.
On the other side, but the
yep,
other
4
one,
stars
nope.
on the other side.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Alder Rivera, you have anything else?
No further questions. I'm pleased to move to grant both agenda items.
Second for Mr. Bruchak. Any further discussion by the committee on this?
Yes, if I could, Chair, I just want to embarrass Eric and Ian for another moment here and again disclose that I have known both of these individuals for a very, very long time, going back eons. I don't want to date them, but I'm the old one, not them. But anyway, as some of you have heard me say in prior meetings, one of the pleasures of serving on this committee is when we see circumstances like this where longtime employees have a vision for succession of the ownership of the establishment where they've worked, and that has absolutely been the case with these applicants. This has been a dream of both of the applicants for a very, very long time. That's why they've, I think, largely had such long, successful tenures at the Plaza. And so I'm just thrilled for both of you that this day has finally come, that your dream is able to be fulfilled. And congratulations to each of you. And I know you'll both continue your excellent jobs that you do and keep the Plaza Tavern, Plaza Burger, Plaza Sauce, all that good stuff, tradition going in our community for a long time to come. So congrats and good luck.
So we have a motion and a second on this item. Any other discussion? Seeing none, any objections to approval? Seeing none, this item is passed. Thank you very much this evening. Congrats. This year, this last year, because now we're in 2025, is when I finally introduced my child, my 10-year-old, to a Plaza Burger. They were very happy. So, next up, unless I'm missing anything, is item number 7. Change of license premise for Refuel Pantry Incorporated, doing business as Refuel Pantry at 4905 Commercial Avenue, agent Lakbar Singh. They have a Class A beer, Class A liquor, and Class A cider. The request is remove part of the license premise to allow another license to occupy that space. Do we have any registrants for this item?
Yep, Harinder Singh is registered and here. I will say that this item is related to item number 11 on our application, on our agenda, because that is the license that this is making space for.
Okay, but they're separate, so.
Separate entities, yes.
Yep, so we'll talk about
I
this
just want to
one.
make the committee aware of that.
Yep, thank you. Hello, welcome. If you can introduce yourself and let us know what you're trying to do with your side of, or your premise right now.
So Harinder Singh, I'm representing the company Refuel Pantry. So we just trying not to do anything. There was 2 businesses at that location. Previously, the previous business, it was a restaurant. They did not have a food license. So just for the sake of clarification, I mean, since the new business is gonna be applying for the license and whatnot, they just want us to make sure we have our separate license and they have their separate license. 2 locations in one building. It's 2 separate entries and all that, you know. So.
Okay. Ms. Farley. For a question for the applicant.
Yeah, given that the application for the change of premises is coming first, do you have any concerns with the committee making an approval on this change and then potentially, you know, for the new license for the other location, like if that wasn't granted? I feel like my question doesn't make sense, but I'm trying to ask if you have any concerns with the order that we are voting on these here.
I guess, Ms. Farley, I think that's a question for Attorney McReynolds, because in my purview is we have to do this first because we can't issue a liquor license to the same physical space for the other user.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. I guess does the applicant, if it's 2 separate entities, does the applicant have any concern with the change of premise regardless of the new license being granted?
So it's 2 buildings, it's 2 separate. They're going to be divided. So it's 2 different, you know, they're not, you know,
Okay,
in the
so
same
even
building.
if they
They're
don't
just 2
get,
different things, yeah.
gotcha, even if they don't get their license, you're okay with changing?
Yeah, we're just
the
doing our
location?
part. So just making sure like this, we just want to, you know, clarify the terms on the license that this is just for the gas station side, not, you know, related with the other side or whatnot, you know.
Perfect. Thank you for detangling my question.
Ms. Carter.
Yeah, I just have a quick question for the applicant. Do you own the building?
Yes, ma'am. The company owns the building. Yes, Refuel Pantry.
Okay. And the restaurant that was there is the space where the new location, was it a
So it's going to be a new,
like
new
a cheese and
restaurant.
something? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make 2 different entrances. And if they don't get their license, you still want it separate, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, Mr. Bruchak.
Sorry if this is repetitive. So just to be clear, are you or the company renting out that
Yes, we're renting it
the
out.
other company?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so you won't be under control of that.
Yeah, we won't be under control of that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
So they will be doing everything on their own. So we're just collecting rent.
thank you.
Yes.
Ms. Farley.
If it's appropriate, I'd like to move to grant.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, so we have we have a motion and a second to grant. Seeing no further questions for the applicant, I'll go have you sit down. Are there any questions for staff or anything like that? Or I guess we'll just ask Attorney McReynolds. I'll ask, was I correct that we have to do this first before we can do the upcoming one for a new license?
That's what I would recommend, yes.
Okay. Seeing any other questions for city staff or any other discussions? Okay, seeing none, any objections to approve this change of license premise? Okay, seeing none, item 7 is approved. So item 7 is taken care of. We've gone through 8 and 9, and that brings us up to item number 10, public hearing, new license for Midwest Pizza LLC, doing business as Rocky Rococo at 618 West Beltline Highway. Agent James Bowick, Class B beer. Do we have anyone registered for this item?
Yep, James is registered and in Zoom.
Okay. James, if you could introduce yourself and let us know what you're doing with Rockies over there on the Beltline.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, so we are just doing business as usual. We purchased the Rockies and we don't plan on changing anything. We may change the hours to 9 p.m. eventually during the week, but right now they're just, we close at 8 during the week and 7 o'clock on on Sundays. So that was what the police officer was asking me when I contacted him, the Southern District or South District, I guess.
Okay. And I'm going to go through the same questions I've pretty much gone through with the other new license or other licenses. Did you have an information session at all?
Yes, we did. And nobody showed up.
And did you contact the alder of the district?
I left a voicemail, but he did not call me back.
Okay. And you said you met with the police department district captain?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, I have.
And did you, and I don't remember, did you contact the neighborhood association over there? Is there an active neighborhood association on that side?
I called they said to call building inspection or planning and I asked around, but nobody had any information for me about an association. So I never did get a hold of any association.
Okay. It looks like Alder Knox. Question for the applicant.
That sounds familiar. Yep.
Yeah, I'm the alder of record. I don't recall getting contacted, but I frequent Rockies being my family on a regular basis. So, and in terms of the neighborhood association, there is a borough association, but it's not very active. I don't see any real issues because it's located in a very, commercial area, not very close to a residential area. I guess I would say I like going to Rockies. I drive by there sometimes hungry and you're closed, so I would love you to extend the hours. I would be honest with you. When I'm busy and I'm like, I want Rockies, and then it's like, oh, they're closed. So I don't know about that 8 o'clock thing, but if you could extend to 9, you'd make a lot of folks happy, including the resident alder here. Okay, just letting you know. You know.
We appreciate your business.
Yeah. But I don't see any real issues with it. I don't drink, but I miss having pizza and beer. I'll tell you a lot. Okay, I'll just say that. So I'm, I don't have any questions. I actually move to approve.
I remember when this Rockies was in its old location before it built the new fancy one, which is now really old.
And my other comment is keep that little fireplace going. We do
No problem.
Ms. Carter.
Yes, I would like to say, well, I also go to this location of Rockies and I have issues with your hours, but I won't discuss that here. I will say you're in between two neighborhoods, although you're in a commercial strip. You have Arbor Hills on, if you're facing the Beltline on your right, you have Burr Oaks on your left, and I believe we all like pizza. So if you can work on those hours, that'd be great. I don't drink beer, so for all those beer drinkers, as long as you're going to keep the beer there, they'll be happy. And I have to agree with Alder Knox. Keep that fireplace. It's iconic. I don't know if iconic's a compliment or not these days, but we like it. And I'll second it, the motion.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion?
No, we do. I think we have.
If we don't have a motion, then I guess I'm not seconding anything, right?
Alder Knox made a motion.
Oh, did he?
Oh,
Okay.
thank you, Catherine.
Okay, so I'm going to assume that Alder Knox's motion is to approve, and Ms. Carter has a second for that. Without being part of the motion, there is a suggestion of lengthening your hours so that they can get their pizza.
There you go. Yeah.
I'll work on that.
Are there any questions or for city staff, or the police captain or the city attorney for this one? Seeing none, is there any discussion? Seeing none, any objections to approval? Item 10 is approved. Thank you very much. Jim, have a good day.
Thank you, you too.
Thanks. Next up is item number 11, which is the second half of the one that we just dealt with earlier. This is a public hearing for new license for Wisco Cheese and Cheers LLC, doing business as to be determined at 4905 Commercial Avenue, Suite B. Agent Kevin Patal, you're asking for a Class B beer license. If you could introduce yourself and let us know what you're doing over with Wisco and Cheese and Cheers.
Sure, I'm renting out the 4905 Commercial Avenue, and I'm trying to open up the restaurant over there, and which is we are offering the cheeseburgers and pizzas and fries and some wings and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to do, and I'm an agent of this company. So.
Okay, and let's do this. So since this is a new license for you and this spot, did you contact the alder of the district?
Yep.
Yes. And did you hear from them or have any conversations with them?
No.
No. And did you hold an information session?
Yep. It's nobody's problem.
Okay. And did you contact the police department district captain?
Yes, I did talk to him.
And what did that conversation entail?
Basically, that was about lightings and stuff like that, and our hours, that'll be closing at 9 p.m. And it's pretty much, he said there's no consent for him.
Okay. Committee, are there any questions for the applicant, Ms. Farley?
And you plan on serving beer and only beer? Is that
Yes, only
correct?
beer, yes.
Alder Knox?
Can you share your background and experience in operating this business, this restaurant, and serving alcohol?
Yes, I've been serving in and out alcohol. I've been working in the gas station and stuff. So I got also bartender license and stuff since probably like 6 years now. So I have a little experience in that too.
Where did you gain your experience?
The gas stations, all the working in the gas station, liquor store, serving with the alcohol and stuff.
Okay, what about the restaurant part of the business?
Restaurant part of business, because we have some location. I mean, I work over some location. Have also some food area and stuff. So that's where I get all the experience and stuff like that. Yeah, I have experience with the Subway, and Subway restaurants and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Carter?
Yeah, is this, and sorry about my dog, but there's dogs barking outside, so he must join.
Yeah.
So you're open at 8 a.m.?
Yeah, I will 9 to 9 or 8 to 9, yes.
Okay, will you be serving breakfast,
No, we are focusing on lunch and dinner times, yes.
lunch and dinner?
Yes, yes.
Okay, and why is this name so familiar? Did you have another location?
For this one?
Yeah.
No, we don't.
Oh, okay. That Wisco was, okay, never mind. Thank
Wisco, I
you.
think
You've
it was-
answered my question.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? Seeing none, I'll have you go take a seat.
Thank you.
Committee, any questions for staff? Seeing none, what is your pleasure for this item? Mr. Bruchak?
I move approval.
Okay, so Mr. Bruchak has moved approval of item number 11. And so I'll just wait to see if we get a second for that. Alder Martinez Rutherford. Is that a second?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion for approval and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, any objections for approval? Seeing none, item 11 is approved. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next up is item number 12, which is amending section 3805 and creating 3805B and C of the Madison General Ordinances related to Class A and Class A alcohol beverage license to impose geographic limitations on Class A and Class A license applications considered by the Common Council after adoption of this ordinance for purposes of regulating density of such alcohol beverage licenses. As we're bringing this forward, I will just make a note. The reason we had talked when this first came forward to us back in June to have its own meeting for this, but due to the size of the committee and the ability to get everyone together, and it had gotten the equity review completed, which was what we were waiting for. This agenda was very small, so we figured we could have a good discussion around this in normal hours versus trying to get everyone together for another meeting. Jim, do we have any registrants for this item?
We do. We have two registrants. We have a Nicholas Davies who's opposed and wishing to speak, and we have a Maureen Busalaki who is in support and also wishing to speak.
Okay, let's bring up Nicholas.
All right. Nicholas is in Zoom. And Nicholas, you should see a prompt to mute. And yeah,
Yeah, you can hear me?
we can hear you. Yes.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. I recognize kind of the problem that this item is geared towards, where certain locations do get a concentration of licensed retail alcohol establishments. But I think the solution that I saw proposed, perhaps it was in earlier versions of this evolving item, of limiting the locations of retail alcohol within quarter mile of a park or a school or a library or other such destinations, seemed like a mismatched solution to the problem, where those geographic exclusions from areas of the city that are well served by city services would create pockets in underserved areas where there would be incentive to concentrate liquor establishments in the future. Also, kind of the big sticking point on this for me is something that was actually called out by the Tavern League of Wisconsin. It's very rare that I ever find myself on the same side of an issue as them. But they called out in their memo that it would likely diminish foot traffic and bicycle traffic while encouraging the use of motor vehicle traffic to buy alcohol. And I agree that would be a problematic side effect of this item, particularly, given our community value on building complete walkable neighborhoods, where people don't need to get in a car to meet, their retail needs or they're going to the park needs or whatever it may be. As I was reading the current version of this item, I do see that there's a carve out for grocery stores. I guess I do have some hope that that carve out could perhaps persuade new liquor stores to incorporate some grocery offerings. But I think it needs some ironing out. I was searching Madison ordinances and I couldn't really find a definition of grocery item. So I'm not sure, what those places would include as their kind of token grocery item to satisfy this ordinance. So yeah, I was curious where this is in the process, and I look forward to your discussion tonight. Thank you.
Sorry.
The other registrant was Maureen Busalaki
Okay,
and is in person.
in person. Okay, Maureen, if you can introduce yourself and let us know what you're thinking about with the ordinance.
Great. My name's Maureen Buzalaki. I live here in Madison. I work for the Medical College of Wisconsin for the Division of Alcohol Policy Prevention and Research and run the Wisconsin Alcohol Policy Project. I'm here for informational purposes, to be clear. I just want to recognize this month is Dry January, so it's a time when we're really rethinking our relationship with alcohol, and there's many positive impacts to taking a break. Secondly, I'd like to acknowledge this month the Surgeon General has a call for cancer labels on alcohol, so I think that's significant in terms of consumption increasing cancer rates, especially for breast cancer for women. And today, the Alcohol Intake and Health Study was released by the Interagency Coordinating Committee on the Prevention of Underage Drinking, and that report addresses several connections about alcohol consumption. One is alcohol use is associated with death to 7 different types of cancer. The risk of having alcohol-related death increases with the amount of consumption. And I think this piece is important. And while we have local control, this does talk about state, but that state-level adult binge drinking rate is associated with a 12% increase, 5% increase in adult binge drinking, with a 12% increase in youth consumption. In other words, there's a relationship between what you do in the adult, quote, adult environment and impacting our kids. There's extensive research showing the impact of density on our neighborhoods. And I've got listing of those if you're interested. And in Madison, we really have a high density of places that sell and serve alcohol. Our city and state, stand out across the nation. There's no shortage of access to alcohol. And I know this is about Class A licenses very clearly, but remember, Class B licenses usually are on premise, but they can sell alcohol for off-site use. So I just want to make that clarification in terms of people being able to access alcohol. And the ratio of people to alcohol licenses in Madison, and this is from 22 data, is 1.2 licenses per 500 people. New Jersey, it's like 1 per 3,000. Idaho is like 1 to 1,500. So we are not even close to like the rest of the country in terms of our density and access to alcohol. On top of this, there was the Baltimore study that showed a significant reduction of homicides and all violent crime when there was a change of policy around alcohol sales. Now, granted, that was about bars and hours, but it does deal about how much alcohol and violence go together. When there are places that sell and advertise alcohol in a particular area, people tend to drink more. And to argue that we don't have a problem in Madison with alcohol is to argue how our community really deals with this issue. It impacts not just our residents, but of course our students. Can I just finish quick?
You can finish.
Okay, thank you. The Color of Drinking report, students think the university should be doing more to address the alcohol culture on campus, and that it disrupts their sense of belonging to both the campus and the city of Milwaukee.
Okay.
Madison, sorry.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the applicant? Alder. Vivier.
Are you calling on me?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you. Okay. Hi, Maureen. Thanks so much for being here. Can you just talk a little bit about why regulating alcohol density in particular is good for community health and well-being?
Sure. We know that the more places that sell and serve alcohol, the more issues there tends to be, like noise, violence, and injuries. And to reduce some of those alcohol-related pressures in a community, it can help to regulate the spacing and number of places that sell alcohol. And everybody deserves to be safe from injuries, disruptions, and other problems that can build up in neighborhoods with high concentration of places that sell and serve alcohol. So we know density is has a big impact in people using alcohol and the impact on kids. It's also been shown in terms of ACEs. When there's a lot of density of alcohol in a particular area, there can be trauma to our children.
And then the last speaker just talked about bikeability and walkability. Is alcohol a need for people? Do they need to have alcohol in their lives?
That's a very difficult question to answer. It certainly is not needed for survival necessarily. But in terms of that question, I think that there is a lot of access to alcohol in the city of Madison. And, I know in my neighborhood in the far west side of Madison, we have multiple places. In fact, I had a bakery that sold beer. And Class A's are not limited. So it does seem like we have quite a number of licenses if you look across the city.
And are there other examples of communities that have chosen to go in ways to limit alcohol density and what has been the impact of that? For example, some of our local surrounding communities, they limit the number of alcohol licenses. Like it's a specific number. It doesn't have to do with density, but it's like a number in their municipality. What do we see as impacts of that limitation?
So density has been studied extensively by the Centers for Disease Control, NIAAA, which works exclusively on alcohol and other research entities. And it is clear the correlation or the relationship between the number of outlets that sell or serve alcohol and the impact on the community in terms of reducing violence, impact, and even just like neighborhood concerns, some of which you were talking about earlier with some of the licenses. So at some point, it doesn't matter whether it's something you grab from a store or it's at a bar. The amount of alcohol in our community is tremendous. And there is clear evidence to show by looking to, kind of bring that kind of more into the norm of the rest of the country, frankly, we can benefit, our measures to reduce violence, for example, our mental health of our youth, and the health of our citizens overall.
And then I don't know if you're familiar with the downtown alcohol density limitation. Is that something you're familiar with, and kind of why that was instituted and the impact that's had?
I have not looked at that recently, so I apologize. I'm not. Up to
That's
speed on that
fine.
one.
I just wanted to kind of bring it up as that, there have been some efforts to limit density in a very specific region of the city. So thanks so much. I appreciate you being here.
If there are no further questions from Alder Vitever, next in line is Ms. Farley.
Yeah. Do you have concerns with the proposed, or I guess the proposal that we have before us, creating pockets of high density retail alcohol in the areas where that wouldn't be covered by the geographic limitations?
So I think, honestly, that is up to this committee and the city council to really look at that. And I think as you look at alcohol licenses, one of the things you should absolutely consider is whether this is a high density area or not. That is your purview as, the city to look at whether or not this would serve the neighborhood, and thinking about how many other licenses are in place and are they the right, is this the right type of thing that we need for a neighborhood? So I think those are things that you can consider as you move forward.
Thank you, Vice Chair Burchak, for coming up here while I had to run out real quick. Alder Knox.
Yeah, I guess I had questions. Have you looked at some of the older studies that talk about the sociological impact of restricting alcohol, like in dry counties and maybe even prohibition, where you have situations where you actually increase the amount of alcoholics that don't have access to alcohol?
That has not been an area of my study. I mean, I'm familiar, of course, with prohibition and dry counties. I don't know that we have. We do not have any dry counties. We still may have a handful of dry towns in the state of Wisconsin. But the amount.
Just generally, not.
Generally, yeah. But generally, we have so much access to alcohol in the state of Wisconsin. We are, we have excessive drinking rates of approximately 25%, which is higher than the national average and has been for years. The average across the country is more like 17%. So it's very significant in terms of how much access we have to alcohol and how much people drink and cause alcohol-related harms as a result of that. And anybody, if you're talking about anyone in need of treatment or who has an alcohol use disorder, of course, we would strongly recommend them, and I know your public health department supports this, of them getting a treatment and working with their healthcare provider to deal with those issues.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Knox. Ms. Farley again.
I'm originally from a state that actually doesn't allow the sale of liquor in grocery stores. And so one of my concerns with the proposal that we have before us today is that providing liquor in a grocery store, and there is a clear carve out for grocery stores, would actually make it more accessible or more visible, rather than an individual specifically going to a liquor store to purchase alcohol. They might be in a grocery store for other reasons and, purchasing that alcohol. And I guess I would love to know your perspective or response to that.
You're correct. And many states do not allow sales of alcohol in grocery stores. And other states limit it and do not have it, for example, in gas stations either. That is what certainly the city of Madison has allowed. And in terms of, again, having access to alcohol, the more we have, the more people tend to drink, and the more impact it has on our community overall. In terms of, ordinances that we've seen in other communities in the state of Wisconsin, they often have separate entrances for alcohol, which I think can serve a bit to the purpose you're talking about. But that would, definitely be an ordinance change. I'm not recommending that. I'm just telling you that some communities do that so that there's a separate entrance to liquor so that they can also make sure that no underage are getting involved. And, oh, by the way, about 9% of alcohol sales go to underage people. So there's certainly a lot that we need to do to reduce our youth getting alcohol from retail establishments.
Thank you.
Thanks. Committee, are there any other questions for the registrant? Okay, seeing none, if you can go have a seat. I guess, we don't get a lot of ordinances in front of us, so I was conferring with Jim what exactly we're doing with this. So I'm just going to kind of have a bit of a discussion before we get into a motion to recommend approval or to recommend whatever. I'm going to start with Attorney McReynolds just to give us an idea, and then we'll go to Alder Vitever.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, that was my suggestion. Was often with ordinances, the sponsor of the ordinance sort of has the opportunity to talk about their vision and why they requested this ordinance amendment. So I will turn it over to Alder Vitever.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you, appreciate it. So I'm going to tell you there's two things that really prompted me to bring this ordinance forward. So the first one is from an experience prior to my coming on council. I ran unopposed the very first time, and so I knew I was going to be on council as of the signature deadline. And so I started watching the council meetings so that I was prepared and understood what I was walking into. One of the council meetings that I observed before I became on council was one in which Quick Trip on the east side was ultimately denied a liquor license due to density. And what I observed in that process is that by not having any kind of comprehensive ordinance, there's a two-tier system, right? This committee and then the council, where our businesses actually have a huge amount of uncertainty as to whether they're going to be able to get a license or not. In my opinion, that's not great for our business community, right? They would like to have an even playing field, to know where they stand. So creating a policy that is actually covers the city and doesn't mean that we're having these one-off conversations each and every single time. Not to say that those can't happen, but that it creates a place where people know where they stand, at least in terms of, in this case, density, really will benefit the business community, in addition to, of course, the public health and community well-being benefit. And that I came to be very familiar with because as part of my day job, I work for the State Division of Public Health, and I was the chief editor of our state health assessment. And in going through the section on alcohol density and learning so much about how increased alcohol density has negative impacts on our communities from, as Maureen talked about, youth drinking, DUIs, assaults, not to mention things like, litter, graffiti, all of those things are impacted when we have higher density. This is what the evidence tells us. And so this is really where things started. Now, as we're going through this process, some of the things that came up were around not wanting to create unintended consequences. So the reason there's a carve out for grocery selling establishments and pharmacies is because we did not want to unintentionally create additional food deserts or medicine deserts in the city. If this entity wants to work to create an ordinance such that we're not going to allow hard liquor sales in grocery stores, I will work with you on that very, very happily. I was just in Utah. Their laws are that you can only buy beer and, interestingly, pre-made cocktails in grocery stores. If you want wine or liquor, and those pre-made cocktails have an alcohol by volume limit. If you want to buy hard alcohol or wine, you have to go to a state-sponsored store or another particular place like that. We don't have those laws in Wisconsin, right? We have extraordinarily lax state-level laws, and so much is left up to municipal control. And so really here trying to create a municipal policy, again, that evens the playing field, that recognizes the negative impacts of too high of alcohol density, concentrating on the Class A's first. And the reason why is because Class B's are so much more complex, right? You've got restaurants, bars, etc., and the bakery, whatever. It's so much more difficult in terms of the Class B's. So really just keeping it very, very confined to the Class A's so that we can ensure that we're really getting to those places where what happens off premises is not controlled, right? When you're on premises and you're in a Class B establishment, theoretically, you have servers who know what they're doing. They're not going to overserve people. They're not going to serve to youth. When you talk about our Class A businesses, anyone can be given that alcohol from somebody else who's purchased it for them, including youth, people who have substance use disorder, etc. So this is a way to try to create some level of consistency in the city and express our community values around health and well-being. And I do have a statement from Public Health Madison, Dane County. They were not able to be here tonight. So it is part of Legistar, but I'm just going to read it quickly. It's not very long. Public Health Madison, Dane County supports efforts to reduce youth access to alcohol and lower the burden of alcohol in Dane County. With the introduced amendments, City of Madison ordinance to limit alcohol retail outlets by geographic proximity, the City of Madison is taking a proactive stance backed by evidence-based research to reduce the burden of alcohol. Increased Class A off-premises alcohol outlet density is associated with increased underage drinking, increased assaults, street violence, domestic and intimate partner violence, motor vehicle crashes, and other forms of injury. According to the Wisconsin Alcohol Policy Project, multiple studies have shown that the more alcohol is available in a neighborhood, the more adolescents consume alcohol. A key study showed that for every 10% increase in overall alcohol outlet density, there was a 17% increase in the odds that a teenager would drink alcohol the next year. In other words, the more alcohol outlets there are in a community, the more teens drink. One effective way to keep the number of alcohol outlets low and allow reduction by attrition is to not grant licenses for new alcohol outlets. The proposed ordinance would effectively prohibit new Class A licenses for liquor stores and gas station convenience stores in areas within quarter mile of facilities that provide services for unhoused individuals, facilities that provide mental health or substance use treatment, and public parks. Public Health believes that this extension of geographic limitations from the already established 300 feet of schools, churches, hospitals, and libraries benefits public health and reduces the burden of alcohol in Dane County. And I am super happy to take questions and as part of the discussion.
Alder Knox.
Sorry, I don't have any questions. I'm waiting for the discussion on this matter. I don't have any questions for the alder.
Okay. Ms. Farley.
So one of the things that I love about Madison is that we have a ton of parks. Has there been a like geographic map created to better understand which areas in Madison we expect to be impacted by this?
Chair, I just want to check protocol if it's appropriate for me to answer that, or Attorney Reynolds or others.
Usually how we run things, I would say I would let you have the opportunity to, I'll let you have the opportunity, Alder, to answer this since you are the lead author of the ordinance.
Yes, the answer is yes, there is a map. And well, essentially what this ordinance would do would be to restrict new licenses, Class A licenses, to kind of the edges of the city where there is not already a high concentration of sensitive areas, shall we say. The original proposal was also a restriction based on distance between Class A licenses. And one of the concerns that came up from the business community was a concern about sort of competition, and that it really created this a place of challenge, business to business. And so when we did the mapping, it turned out that it was almost exactly the same. And so we took out the business to business restriction from the earlier draft because the impact was the same. The restrictions would wind up, again, confining new Class A licenses really to the edges of the city.
Is that mapping publicly available?
I don't think it's been entered into Legistar, but we can do that.
Mr. Bruchak.
Thank you, Alder Vitiver, for speaking with us tonight. We saw this ordinance proposal a long time ago. Can't remember when. Has it changed? Has the draft changed at all since we first saw this, maybe a year ago?
So originally we were trying to do this through a zoning ordinance, and that was never introduced because kind of on the cusp of introducing it, some new questions were raised, and zoning basically recognized that it was incredibly problematic. And so then we shifted lanes to try to do this through licensing. And so since that introduction, on this one, it has not changed.
Okay. So I was trying to read it quickly, but just confirm that it grandfathers existing places, existing Class A license establishments.
Existing Class A licenses are not impacted by this ordinance. It is only for new. I think we would have a lot of legal action if we tried to do that. No, it is only for new Class A licenses.
Would you be willing to discuss a little bit of the issues with the original plan of attack to do this through zoning?
So to be clear, that was based on, so we already have existing tobacco ordinance, and that is, again, recognizing that tobacco is something that the higher density you have, the more access youth have to it. And we do have a tobacco density ordinance, and that is done through zoning. And so it was originally modeled on that. It's just a more challenging space because of the diversity of types of entities that can be doing Class A licenses. And it was really, really tough to do the carve out around the grocery stores and the pharmacies through zoning, because it wound up making the zoning staff have to like go and do inspections to figure out, like what percentage of a store is grocery and that kind of stuff. And so it was just a very complicated approach. And so we wound up pulling it back and then going the licensing route.
Thank you. One more question. Am I reading this right? And is it your intention that this would prohibit any new type of Walmart or Costco or some kind of superstore that may sell groceries, liquor, whatever, and then automobile service, tires, repair?
So the intention is to restrict Class A licenses with the exception of places that sell groceries and pharmacies. So a Target or a Walmart would wind up being exempted but so would a local family pharmacy, so would a local corner store. But what would not be exempted is gas stations. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of new gas stations planned for Madison. But if somebody wanted to bring in a new gas station, they would not be able to have a Class A license at that site within the proximity defined in the ordinance.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
it will primarily apply to liquor stores and gas stations.
That sounds good. We can check with the attorney too, but I think the exception that you quoted, there's an exception in the exception for automobile services. I'm pretty sure I've seen the sale of tires and oil changes at like a Walmart. But that's in the weeds. We can move on for now.
Thank you, Mr. Bruchak. I was going to ask about the same questions because when I read that exception, Woodman's popped into my head, Hy-Vee and other locations that have gas stations, the Costco's of the world, that type of thing, the bigger big box. The question I do have, Alder, for you is, how do you feel about, since these existing ones are going to be grandfathered in, the fact that their location has a license, their business value is automatically inflated because now they have something that locks their competition out from setting up next to them and taking them out of the market.
Yep. I don't know how else to answer that except to say that if we want to try to limit density, there are going to be business impacts. And I like to say we're saying you can't have that business, you just can't necessarily have it here. And so it will be, as you say, it'll be better for the existing businesses because they will have less competition. And so, those newer businesses will need to make sure that they're located in the areas that comply with the ordinance.
And one thing before we move on to Ms. Farley or Alder Knox, a question for Attorney McReynolds. With Wisconsin law around licensing and density, if one of these existing if we pass this ordinance and one of these existing Class A licenses wants to sell their business, would that license transfer or would they be unable to sell their business because that liquor license would no longer be able to be procured in that location?
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure, so Alder Vederver worked on this with Assistant City Attorney Zillavi, who was not able to make it tonight, and I am almost certain this is something they discussed. And I think it would depend on how the license is transferred. If it's a brand new sale, that would be different than transferring it within a company, like an entity reorg, similar to how we handle other establishments. And I see Alder Vederver is shaking her head, or nodding her head, so she might have more to add to that. But I think the answer is it depends, or it would depend.
That was my understanding as well, is that as long as they set it up to transfer the license either before the sale or immediately within some certain time frame of the sale, that they would still be able to do that. So I bow to the legal wisdom.
And why did we choose and maybe we've covered this, the 1320 feet, the quarter of a mile?
To try to start somewhere.
Okay.
So it was a quarter mile as a distance to choose. So, there could have been, I could have chosen a mile, but that would have really been quite draconian. So,
I'm gonna go with Ms. Carter, just because she hasn't asked anything yet, and then we'll go back through the list.
Thank you. Does this cover the whole city? Okay. But when you came here before and you were discussing, you got involved in a liquor license of a gas station, you specifically targeted that area of having high density, and you really went after that applicant, which I thought was unnecessary, but who am I? How did it go from, and then when you came back and presented this, how did it go from looking at that area to the whole city? Because it didn't sound like you were talking about the whole city before.
So this ordinance was originally introduced and then tabled. And during the time that it was tabled, a license came up that was an extraordinarily high density area, very, very near to sensitive sites. And we were using the proposed ordinance that would cover the whole city as a discussion topic as to why that entity would not have been allowed to get a license. It should had this ordinance been put in place because it was too close to other sensitive sites. So there was never, again, the intention of this is to create a level playing field for our businesses so they know where they stand. So they're not going to have a situation either like Quick Trip or in that case, that business, they came very close to not getting granted that liquor license at council. And so that's putting that business through a tremendous amount of uncertainty, a lot of difficulty. And in my opinion, if we have an ordinance that is exhibiting our values as a community overall, then we don't go through those individual cases like that. And we aren't taking things on a case by case basis, and it's making better policy for the city.
Okay. So you say, I would like to, what is, I guess two things that I am not understanding here. And one is the statement of whether people need liquor or not, because I think it's somewhat of a choice whether you drink liquor or not. But my question is, what is the workload that we are putting on whoever, the clerk's office, the zoning? I mean, what's the workload for that? Or is this something where the applicant has to do the work to find out if they can have a business and have a liquor license? And that's not to you, Alder Vidovere. I'm asking a general question. Either attorney or Jim can answer that.
Thank you. My understanding is that staff are able to map this. And my understanding is that it would not be up to the applicant to figure this out, that they could ask the city to they could give an address to the city, or the city could show them a map of where a new establishment would be or would not be allowed.
Okay, thank you.
Jim, can you comment on that?
Sure. Yeah, I would say.
From what today's process is and what we would need to change.
Yeah, I would say right now there's not a way for us to know where exactly a license would be allowed. I think the only way, because right now the only restriction we have as far as who can apply for what where is the overlay district in the University Ave, High State Street kind of area. And so we use like a map that we can look to see that. But when we enter the license into our licensing system, we don't have any sort of alert that comes up that this location is an area. We just kind of going by what we're seeing. So I don't know if planning and IT can work out something in our licensing system that would give us some sort of alert if a license, that the address that we're listing is in that particular area. But right now, we don't have that. But I don't imagine it's out of the means of us creating, but nothing exists right now.
Okay, thank you. Alder Knox.
Yeah. Alder Vitever, I guess I do have a question for you. So someone mentioned earlier, this will be mapped out, and I haven't seen a map, but I guess, can you tell us, looking at this map, what neighborhoods it tends to target? Are there particular neighborhoods based on socioeconomic status or certain district neighborhoods? Can you respond to that if this ordinance were passed?
So I think the term you're using is not accurate. There's no targeting. It is a citywide ordinance. And so it would prevent new Class A's from being within a quarter mile of sensitive sites. And so the places that don't currently contain those sensitive sites and where those new Class A's would be allowed are essentially the far, far west and the far, far east side. And again, I can forward the map that I have. But I think there was maybe one tiny little pocket kind of in the southwest portion of the city. But the point is that we have a fairly high, as one of the committee members asked earlier, we have a fairly high concentration of parks. And so that would then impact a significant portion of the city. So there's no targeting. It's not going to oversaturate any new areas. It's basically just saying the only places it's going to be allowed is places where there aren't a lot of people living yet, because we don't have a lot of parks and other amenities such as health systems and things like that. And that's really the far west and the far east side.
So you feel like these areas will end up on the far,
like basically
reaches
the areas,
of the city as opposed to more populated areas of the city. Is that
right? It's kind of the places where we're just starting to build out on the far east and far west side, because there's just not a lot of amenities there yet.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And as those go in, then this would be impacted as well. So like if you put a new health center on the far west side, then now this would apply.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Farley.
Yeah, I have two questions. So my first one, would you say, and this is for Alder Vitever, would you say that this ordinance more or less effectively bans liquor stores in the city of Madison?
New ones.
Sure.
New ones.
Okay.
More or less, yeah, except on the far east and west sides, basically.
Right. My second question is that there's like a section B here that says within a quarter mile of entity providing services to unhoused individuals. There's lots of places that provide services to unhoused individuals, like any service that anyone can get, like a bank or a post office. So how is that actually defined?
Yeah, that was not the intention of that. That was thinking about places like the Purpose-Built Men's Shelter, like the Beacon, like the YWCA, places like that that are they're primarily serving those spaces, those particular clients.
Thank you.
I have a question for, I believe, Attorney McReynolds. If this ordinance passes, the effect on the ALRC, is this if a license comes to us, is there an exception path to this, or is it it's just a no?
The way that it's currently written, I don't think there would be an exception, other than obviously the exemptions listed in section 2. I don't know if it's been contemplated if we'd even get as far as the ALRC if someone's applying for a place that they can't have a license to. That might take place earlier in the process.
So it takes us out of that. It puts the clerk's office into the responsibility of saying yes or no to, yes, you can even apply for this. And, you know, kind of like how we have the ordinance for gas stations or gas stations that have pumps, right? They cannot sell hard liquor. There is no exception process. It's a hard line in the sand that we put. This would be a hard line in the sand.
Yes.
Okay. Alder Knox, did you have another question for the Alder? Or for anyone else?
No, I'm just waiting for discussion.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? Or do we want to move on to more or less more open discussion? Alder Revere.
Thank you, Chair. I do have perhaps a question or two that hasn't already been asked and answered of the Alder, and I do appreciate all these excellent questions that have been asked. And perhaps some of my questions might harken back, Alder, to some of the conversations we've had over the last couple of years about this initiative, which I give you great credit for your tenacity, by the way, and perseverance and patience to get to where you have been, because you've been working on this, I think, as you've already articulated, for quite a long time. The first, and some of these, as was said earlier by you, Chair, might be also more appropriately answered by Assistant City Attorney McReynolds. But looking at the draft, well, I shouldn't say draft, the introduced legislation, could one of you explain in a little more detail what I'll call it 1A means when it says, quote, if the site is within the distance restriction and other provisions in MGO 38.05 sub 3 sub F related to schools, churches, hospitals, and libraries. I'm very familiar with that state statute in Chapter 125, and it's been in our MGOs since the 1940s. Whereby if a majority of it's assumed that if a majority of the council grants a license, that provision is waived. That same language is in the state statute. So could you, if this as drafted, as introduced, is enacted, what exactly would that mean for the existing provision in state law and MGO 38.05 relating to schools, churches, hospitals, and libraries?
My understanding is that it wasn't intended to change it at all, but Alder Vetiver would have worked on that with ACA Zillevy. If you remember anything different, I'd ask you to mention it.
Yeah, no, the purpose was to keep everything the same. There was some strange thing in the existing ordinance that we also were changing with this one, which had to do with something about that a person had to be of good moral character.
Yeah, good moral character is stricken.
And that we were taking out, and that was another piece of this ordinance because people were like, what the heck does that mean? That's very subjective. So that was also being dealt with in this ordinance.
Okay. It wasn't obvious to me the way it's worded here, what we were doing relating to schools, churches, hospitals, and libraries, that it was or was not anything different. So I appreciate you explaining that. I don't know, maybe it would be worth Assistant City Attorney Zillevy looking at that again. But so it is absolutely your intent, Alder, that we would not change that provision, because it is in the state law, obviously, for those that aren't familiar more with what we're talking about, it says that if a main entrance is less than 300 feet of a school, hospital, church, unless waived by a majority vote of the city council, then neither a Class A nor Class B license could be granted. And again, this has been on the books apparently since the 1940s, because in our MGO, it actually says that premises licensed before 1947 are in essence grandfathered or not covered. So in those cases, it would still be the 300 feet, and it would still kind of on automatic pilot be kind of ignoring that provision if we grant a license.
I'm not quite sure I'm following. So there was no intention to change anything about that existing part of the ordinance. So
Okay, so it's not, so in other words, what you're not proposing anything related to schools, churches, hospitals, or libraries?
if the site is within the distance restriction, this is I'm going to defer to the attorneys because this is definitely legal speak that is not my space.
Let me just look at it again.
But in terms of, I'll go ahead. Sorry.
No,
Amber.
so I think Alder Verveer, what I'm hearing you say is that even though we have the current MGL 38.05 sub 3 sub F, that if the council grants it, it's ignoring that provision. Is that what you're saying, that it's an automatic pilot to ignore that provision?
Yeah, sorry if I'm not being clear. Yeah, so in all the years I've had the privilege of serving, that provision has, to my recollection, never been raised, never been, you know, it's just, that's why I say automatically. We don't discuss that provision in Chapter 125 or our own MGO Chapter 38 ever in this forum or at the council meetings. It's just, I got off the top of my head, I can certainly think of licensed premises that are within 300 feet today of those sorts of uses. So I guess just to be clear, so back to Alder, you didn't intend to increase the 300-foot provision or do anything relating to those sorts of uses, right? So schools, hospitals, churches, libraries are not a part of this legislation.
That was the way I understood it.
Yes. Okay.
But
and we'll have to just ask
depending
the
on how the
drafting.
legal, interpretation is, I'm not certain.
Okay, yeah, and we can, obviously, Attorney McReynolds can circle back to Attorney Zellevee, or I'm sure Attorney Zellevee might watch the video of our conversation here and just double check and see if we need to perhaps amend this in that sense, because I too am a little confused, but I totally understand your intent now for that. A couple of other things that haven't really been talked about in great detail yet in terms of the questions raised tonight is how we would deal with transfers. So applications for Class A transfers of license. And as a reminder, transfer under state statute is moving from one physical address to another. And we probably discussed this in our first meeting about this, Alder. So I don't know if either you or Attorney McReynolds can confirm then if I currently own one of the Class A licensed premise and wish to move to within, say, a quarter mile of a public park, that would be prohibited, correct? Even if I'm currently licensed and applying for a transfer as opposed to a new license? Or was it your intent that that transfers be permitted?
I can take that one, Alder Vitterber. I would treat it the same. I understand it to be the same as the alcohol overlay district, where anyone who has a current license doesn't get an exception to go into a zone or an area where they are prohibited.
And in terms of a change of license premise, though those would be allowed under this legislation. So if someone wanted to expand their square footage, that would be totally fine, kind of maybe the reverse of an earlier agenda item with the gas station convenience store renting out part of the space to a restaurant. If they wished later, if this became law and they wished later to reclaim that space that they're leasing and use it as part of their license premise for Class A alcohol sales, that would be permitted under this proposal?
I don't see anything under the proposed ordinance or introduced legislation that would prohibit the change of license premise. I think that could also be something that's dealt with in conditions. If it, if the ALRC chose to put conditions on a license when it was granted, but there's nothing in this about change of license premise.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just add that that was one of the challenges that came up with doing this by zoning, because there were things around if the square footage changed or something that it modified things, and it just made it super complicated. So that was also part of the reason why we scrapped the zoning approach.
Thank you. Did you, and this is more for Alder Vitavere, did you consider perhaps a provision that would further restrict the possibility of then what normally might be a Class A establishment instead applying for a Class B establishment, and by very minimally meeting the definition of a Class B establishment? I'll give a very good example that you probably recall, and certainly those of us on the committee recall, and that is for those of us that have lived here a long time, the Regent Street Open Pantry, 7-Eleven, now Regent Mart it's called. But as a reminder, were before this committee many times in the last year. And first they applied for a Class A license, which we granted with conditions. And then they came back though and said, oh, actually we'd want a Class B license. And with very few modifications to their license premise. Is that something that you thought about and were concerned that maybe if this is enacted that more establishments will go the way of grocery stores? When I first joined this committee, almost all grocery stores, supermarkets were licensed as Class A establishments. There's been a significant trend to Class B establishments for applying for Class B licenses by establishments like supermarkets, and so they can have the liberty of a handful, very minimal amount of seating, for example, for their customers. Is that something that you discussed and thought much about?
No,
those situations?
And certainly I'm very open to talking through options like that. And really it was that Class Bs are so complicated that it felt like that this was a starting place to just start with something that would have, frankly, a very limited impact, but that would still indicate that, we had an interest in limiting alcohol density. And so it's, if you feel that there are other unintended consequences and would be interested in doing an amendment that would, prohibit the transfer of a Class A to a Class B, I would be open to that, certainly.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I have some other questions, but I think in realizing that several colleagues have said they really want to get to discussion, I'll hold off for now. So thanks very much.
So let's move this into the discussion phase around this ordinance change. If you check your email, Jim sent out the map of what this looks like. I haven't pulled it up yet on my computer, but if you check your email, you should have something of what that looks like. Thank you for getting that out right away. So for discussion, let's start with Alder Knox.
Thank you. I guess I kind of will start out saying that I certainly understand the need to use data in determining health trends. We get a lot of that information, all the time, social media, TV, what have you. And obviously, many of the negative health data is found, ironically, targeted to lower economic, generally persons of color communities for a variety of reasons. I remember some of this topic being discussed before. However, I really believe that issues like alcoholism and drug abuse are very much individual decisions that may elevate to community issues, but that are more individual issues. And I don't believe we can legislate our way out of those things. For example, my parents come from Appalachian, Kentucky, that the particular county they're from, many people have heard of Harlan County, is kind of famous for other reasons. It was a dry county, meaning no alcohol sales. And I could tell you that there were more alcoholics or people with alcohol abuse in that county than anywhere I've ever lived. They developed illegal moonshine operations, and people frequently would go over the county line to purchase alcohol. I recently visited Harlan County for a positive, my parents' high school celebration. And I notice now it's called a moist county, meaning that they allow alcohol sales in restaurants in that county and in certain cities. So even they recognize that when you start prohibiting alcohol sales, you sometimes end up having a worse problem. To create an ordinance that restricts alcohol sales in certain neighborhoods based on whatever factors, the number of, I guess in this case, density, I believe to be discriminatory. What you're saying is certain neighborhoods are allowed the privilege of having access to alcohol where other communities may not. And, or maybe be more responsible or have access to better services to deal with these issues of alcoholism. In other words, they probably can handle those situations more responsibly. Now, I'm going to admit that I have a bias because I'm from Milwaukee. And we used to joke and say there's a bar or a tavern on every corner or a church on every other corner. That was the joke. But I remember these taverns as serving a vital role in the community. And even I recall one of my neighbors actually, which is really unusual, an African American who actually purchased a gas station and operated a gas station, sort of food mart. And he was one of the positive symbols in our community because that's very unusual. But these small businesses were literally part of the social fabric of our community, and they represented a strong small business sector in our community. Not only did they provide a social outlet, but they sponsored community sports and recreation. events, as well as other community efforts. I could recall my neighborhood a tavern called Turan's that was the place where all of the Black professionals, teachers, judges, doctors, nurses, politicians, police officers, and firefighters, and other government workers would come together to not only socialize, but often mobilize on community issues. Here in Madison, we have this alcohol review committee that's charged to review all applicants for alcohol licenses. Licenses are required to meet with the alder, the police district captain, meet with the neighborhood residents. You know, our role is to make competent decisions, and we definitely look at negative impacts on different neighborhoods, and we have the authority to impose restrictions or removal of licenses when there are problems in those neighborhoods. This process, I believe, ensures a fair process for both the applicant, who are small business people, and the neighborhood residents that may be impacted by this business, not based on some global statistics of density, but that may have a correlation to the problem, but may not actually be the cause of the problem we're trying to get to. This is what I call social engineering. And a lot of times we're trying to get at an issue, but I'm not so sure that we really do. And then I'm just going to add, this is just my general comments, and I have some more specific ones, but I'm going to leave it here. But this also reminds me of a situation that currently continues where we grant licenses all the time, all of us, for years, and you have to consider, do you ever consider that there are hardly any Black people who apply for owning alcohol licenses for establishments or outlets? I can only remember one since I've served here in the city of Madison. And this is not a new problem. So I really kind of feel like when we start doing this social engineering, that the byproduct is that we negatively impact the opportunities for other people to experience small business opportunities. And one of the things I always think about is I would love to just leave my house, walk, and go to an establishment of people like me to socialize in a bar or maybe a restaurant that's Black owned. I don't have that experience here in Madison. I really don't. And I think these are the kind of social engineering policies that do impact our city in a lot of ways. And nobody seems to be thinking about this. The one thing that I think this particular ordinance will need to go through our racial equity process to make sure that we're not inadvertently negatively impacting our community. So I'm going to just leave that there. I'm not going to get to any specifics of this ordinance, but I'm certainly not in favor of this. Thank you.
Just a point, Alder Knox, the reason we are discussing this tonight is because the racial equity and social justice report is now complete. It is attached to the Legistar. So that is,
the question is it accurate? Okay.
Yep, I get that. I don't know.
All right, there you go. Thank you.
Yep. Alder Vitiver.
Yeah, just want to reinforce Class A's. We're not talking about Class B's.
We're not
talking about gathering places. We are
It
talking
could be outlets too. Business establishments.
right. So this particular ordinance is only about Class A's. I want to be crystal clear about that, because as I said, Class B's are really complicated. And if we do want to do something about Class B density, which I think it's reasonable for us to think about that, we're going to have to be very, very careful about it because, in particular, as we think about restaurants, I personally think about restaurants as a public good. They are one of our main sites of entrepreneurship and bring tremendous culture to our community. And I do not want to do anything that would inhibit restaurants in any way.
Yeah.
And that is purposefully why this is only about Class A's. And if we do want to talk about Class B's, we're going to have to really think hard about how we could do that in a way that doesn't negatively impact those businesses that we see as very, very positive for our community.
So Alder Vitiver, one of the things you need to recognize is because we don't have those kind of establishments for Black people, we frequently go to the Quick Trips and some of these other places to socialize. So you're missing the point that I'm trying to make. Okay? Because I know you don't have that experience, but we do. I often meet with one of my friends, Richard Brown, at the Quick Trip for coffee, and we talk there at the gas station. Okay? Don't miss the point. Don't miss the point. Thank you.
Any other discussion around this ordinance? Mr. Bruchek.
Thank you, Chair. I don't think I'll be voting tonight to recommend passage of this ordinance change. I don't think it's ready for prime time. Just in the discussion today, we found what I might characterize as loopholes. The Class B loophole, where an establishment could have a small kind of seating area and call themselves a Class B, but have it be Class B. And then there's the Walmart superstore loophole that I think is slightly problematic. More importantly, I think this adds a lot of confusion to the community, to the council, the LRC, etc., maybe even a staff, without doing a lot. I'm concerned that the Section 2 exemptions for grocery stores in particular will almost render the whole thing meaningless, because if I sell a bag of chips or some candy bars at my liquor store, that's groceries as far as I understand. Moreover, I'm concerned about the fact that this only applies to new licenses, and this map that was just sent around makes it pretty clear that the vast majority of the territory of the city there could be no new Class A licenses under this. However, there are numerous purple dots on this map that indicate existing licenses, and so I would be handing these existing businesses a huge gift of a guarantee of no competition. And finally, I think this will unnecessarily take away authority from ALRC in the council. And we've, on this committee, have done a great job looking over applications and making the judgments. And as we discuss, we won't get that opportunity anymore because should this be enacted, places within the buffer zones will be dead on arrival. I don't think the ALRC will ever see it, and the council will never see it. So those are my comments. Thank you, Alder Vitiver, for discussing this with us and for your work on this so far.
Ms. Farley.
Alder Vitiver, I do also want to thank you for the work that you've done so far. I originally joined the ALRC because of my background as a peer advisor and reducing harm from alcohol when I was in college. So I agree with the mission that we're trying to accomplish, but I have concerns that the ordinance as proposed overcomplicates a very simple objective, and that is to ban liquor stores in the city of Madison. I also have concerns that the ordinance would actually be able to accomplish the goals that we're trying to achieve, particularly around the exemption for grocery stores. Personally, I feel like having and encouraging alcohol in grocery stores over a designated liquor store could have the opposite effect of making alcohol more available, especially when individuals are going to the grocery store for other reasons rather than to purchase alcohol, but may purchase it because it's there, because it's visible, because it's advertised. So that's also why I wouldn't vote tonight in favor of the ordinance. But I do appreciate all of the work and research that you've put into this.
Thank you. Ms. Carter.
Yes, I'm not going to repeat what has been said previously, but I do want to take the time out also to thank you for doing the research, because I believe it was thorough. The thing about a discussion is we're always open to dialogue, and there's always room for compromise, but it is also room for disagreement. But I do appreciate your effort.
Committee, any other discussion around this item? I see a hand. And we'll go back to Alder Vitiver.
So I just want to invite any and all of you to work with me to develop an ordinance that you could feel that you could support. I'm hearing a lot of, we understand what you're trying to accomplish, but we don't think this is the right way to do it. And so I really would like then to have a partnership in which we're able to find common ground. If this isn't the right way to do it, then okay. And all I can tell you is I've worked very closely with public health, with legal, with zoning, and this was the advice that I received in what was the best way to accomplish a reduction, or not a reduction, but a stagnation of our current Class A alcohol density. And so if this body has an interest in, for example, having the same sort of prohibition in grocery stores as exists in gas stations, such that no hard liquor is sold, I would be thrilled to work with you on a proposal like that. I don't think that that will be very well received by the business community, but what I am interested in is our community's health and well-being, and we know that it is impacted by density. And so I invite you to work with me if this is not the path forward, on a path that you
please get something to eat.
Did we lose Alder Vitiver? Nope. Okay. I heard some weird noise happened that I stopped hearing you talk and didn't know if something happened. Alder Revere.
Well, yeah, thanks very much, Chair, and thanks, Alder Vitiver. I don't want to be repetitive, but I'll just add kind of to the chorus of my colleagues here on the committee, and first and foremost express, as I kind of mentioned in the preamble to my questions, your tremendous amount of work you put into this. Obviously, you care deeply about this. I know you're a public health professional through and through, and I totally get what you're trying to do here, and I think the intentions are good. I am absolutely willing to continue a conversation on something that I think would make sense, that I think I personally might be able to support. This current draft, I think, has too many concerns for me to be able to do that in its current form. A couple of points I just want to make at the top. First, I think that our committee has done a pretty good job looking at all applications on a case-by-case basis. It's kind of really comes down to location, location, location. I use that phrase often with our applicants when I feel that they might think that we're impugning their character or their backgrounds when that has nothing to do with it. It's all about location, density, sensitive neighborhoods and institutions. One example in the last year, because it was mentioned in the discussion of what the legislature was intending to do, is mentioning the YWCA. There's been a long time liquor/convenience store only a couple blocks from the YWCA on East Mifflin Street. Some will recall it was sold before our committee in the last year or so, and they attempted to have a full license to be able to sell spirits for the first time there. And we said, no, we don't think it's appropriate because of your location. And I think we generally try to do that all the time. That's why we believe the input of the alder of the district, the neighborhood association, the police district captains is so critical. So I don't want to say that we always get it right and pat ourselves on the back collectively, but I think we do the best we can and try to do everything we can to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of the community. The overall density of Class A's, and it's interesting in the ResJ, fast track analysis that we finally received in recent days, makes the point, and I guess Attorney Zilovey is the main author of that ResJ analysis, if I understand correctly. But she makes, I'll say she, but anyway, I know it wasn't just her. But the point is made that when this legislation was first introduced, there were 131, I believe I read the figure, 131 issued Class A licenses in our community. And here we are about a year later, and there's only 3 more, 134. So it doesn't seem like they're expanding by leaps and bounds, especially considering the tremendous growth of our community, both in land and population. So I'll just want to make that point clear. I will echo what was said earlier about the fact that, again, from my vantage point, serving on this committee for a very long time, that privilege allows us to see time and time again immigrants, members of the immigrant community, whether they've lived here a long time or recent arrivals, that are able to try to fulfill their dreams. And often it is through a Class A, to be sure, many restaurants as well, Class Bs, but many Class A's establishments. And I do have a concern that we were limiting the opportunities for entrepreneurs of color, especially immigrants that we see at our committee on a regular basis. If this ordinance is enacted, certainly anything close to how it's currently written. And then, not to be repetitive from some of the Q&A I asked, but I, again, from my long experience serving on this committee, I have seen this tremendous growth of not so much Class A's, as I mentioned earlier, sharing those numbers, but establishments that in the old days, I'll call it, would be Class A's, and now they're applying for Class B licenses. What really opened my eye was when Total Wine and More came to our community, a nationwide, highly successful liquor establishment that said, they came to us and said, oh, no, we wouldn't consider a Class A. We need a Class B license for our business plan. And as I say, most supermarkets now are doing that in our community and probably all over the state. I'm sure it's not just here. And I, cited the Regent Mart example that we've had in the last year as well, where that was very controversial, and going from a Class A to a Class B for the neighborhood, or at least many of the neighborhood stakeholders. So anyway, I won't belabor the point, just to say that I'm happy to continue this conversation very much so. And if I could just close by asking, Alder Vidovere, are you then asking us tonight, and you'd be happy to, I shouldn't say happy, let me prove that, you'd be comfortable, and your request would be perhaps to refer this to a future meeting as opposed to an alternate motion, which likely would be to place on file at this time? if I could ask Chair the Alder that question directly.
Yes, please.
So, sure. I guess what I'd really like to hear from this committee is if there is an interest in having an ordinance at all, because from what I've heard from some of the comments so far, it sounds like you feel like the system's working just fine as it is, even though I explained at the very beginning that one of the reasons that I wanted to do this was because, in my opinion, it's not an efficient process because it gives businesses 2 points at which they could potentially be denied. And so it's a lack of clarity for them. But if there is zero interest in going forward with any type of ordinance that would limit density, then I guess that's the direction that I'm looking for from this committee is do you feel that density is something that should be something that we think about and limit on as a citywide process versus on a case by case basis?
I'll just quickly reclaim my time, if I might, and say you're looking at the author of the alcohol overlay district ordinance that's on the books today. So, and you and I have talked about that experience in the campus area. So I obviously would be a hypocrite if I said I don't believe that there are issues with alcohol density, and that's why we have that ordinance, or I should say that provision of the zoning code on the books today. So with that said, I would be pleased to move to refer to a future meeting, Chair, because I believe that that's what the sponsor is asking us to do as opposed to an alternative.
Ms. Farley?
I'll second the motion.
So right now we have a motion to re-refer this to another meeting of the ALRC after a new version of the ordinance is, I assume it would be once a new version of the ordinance is drafted. Am I correct with that, Alder Revere?
Yes, so I wasn't proposing a specific date.
Right.
Obviously, this has been floating on our agenda for months and months and months, as was mentioned earlier, waiting for the Res-J analysis to be complete. But yeah, so I would say it at a time that the sponsor wishes to have us consider this legislation again, within reason. So I purposely the motion I made purposely was not to a specific date. If we feel we need a specific date, we could.
No, I'm fine without.
A certain month, a couple months out.
No, I'm fine without a specific date. I just wanted to make sure that when we were doing that, we knew that it probably wouldn't be February, right? So that's where I'm at with that. Although half the night I thought it was Thursday, so we'll just cover that up. So that's why I'm just making sure for clarification. So we've got a motion to refer this to some meeting of the ALRC when this comes, if this comes back around. I guess I'm just going to reach out and ask a question to Attorney McReynolds, is if that's the best way to handle this.
I think that makes sense given what I've heard from the council, or I'm sorry, from the members of the ALRC and the sponsor.
Okay. And Alder Revere, did you have more questions or something to say? Discussion on the
Yeah, so the council president who is with us, maybe she wants to speak directly, but she just texted me and reminded me that it is absolutely a requirement that we have a specific date. It's a relatively new ordinance that was enacted a couple of years ago. So even though that ordinance doesn't work all that well, I think. We have to pick a date. So should I just suggest a couple months from now, or? Okay, I see the sponsor nodding. Thank you. So why don't, I'll amend my motion, Chair, to re-refer this to the ALRC meeting of March 19th.
Okay, and
President Figueroa Cole, who's with us, do you want a council date after that as well?
Yeah, otherwise we have to update it when we review the agenda.
So you'd like me to then also share the the Common Council date after that?
Correct. So otherwise we're gonna have to come back to the committee and ask when we're reviewing the agenda.
For Register purposes, then, Jim, the Common Council meeting immediately after that is March 25th. But I don't know if we want to do that or be consistent with when the applications that night would all go to the council. Would that be April 15th, Jim?
It would be April 15th.
So why don't we say April 15th then to make your agenda preparation easier?
Okay.
Thank you.
okay. Ms. Farley, are those changes good with you?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion on the table to refer this to the March ALRC meeting. And any discussion on referring this over to there? As people are getting there, I agree as chair to the referral. I've been opposed to this since the beginning, but I think there is probably a way we can get something done without such a heavy hand that this would do, and that would still allow the ALRC or the Common Council to have some exception policies. And the biggest problem I have are the exemptions for big business in 2B. So yeah, that's all I have to say on this. Any other discussion on the re-referral?
Roll call.
Okay. Jim, if you could do a call. And just a reminder that the motion on the floor is to re-refer this to the March meeting of the ALRC to bring this back, hopefully with changes for discussion.
Alder Martinez Rutherford.
Aye.
Alder Martinez Rutherford, aye. Alder Revere.
Aye.
Alder Revere, aye. Mr. Baruchuk. Okay. Ms. Farley.
Aye.
Ms. Farley, aye. Alder Knox.
No.
Alder Knox, no. Ms. Carter.
No.
Ms. Carter, no. Mr. Baruchuk. Mr. Baruchuk, aye. Chair, the vote is 4 ayes and 2 noes.
Okay, this item is referred to the March meeting of the ALRC. Thank you, everyone, for the great discussion and things to think about. Up next, we have the report of the Madison Police Department. Captain, what do you have for us today? We still have the
Chair?
I don't think we have the captain.
Yeah, Chair, Captain Kamoski texted me
Okay.
during the last agenda item, and she said that she needed to log off for a family commitment. And she asked me to just share this very brief police update with all of you. She writes, I don't have anything to share. No issues at establishments, and overall New Year's Eve across the city went well. And we had no issues with establishments that night. And then she said further that she emailed the deputy city clerk with similar information. Was anything left out of the text, Jim? Anything beyond that in the email you received from the captain? Otherwise, I guess that's about it. Very brief.
Looks just like what you said.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions around that? Although we don't have anyone to answer, so we'll just move on to the report of the city clerk's office. You can ask Jim all of your questions if you have them.
Thank you so much. I don't have a whole lot. I have a unicorn moment in which a regular license was surrendered. Brinker surrendered the Chili's license on the east side, and that became available yesterday. It was claimed within 24 hours. The folks from Haven who were here last month were able to claim that one. So we had one, it's gone already. The only other thing I have to add is we updated our number of reserve licenses based on the population increase from not 2024 to 2025, but rather 2023 to 2024. And based on the population increase, we added 8 additional reserve licenses. So I usually find out in October when our increases are. So that's about when you can expect when those numbers go up. We have a total of 202. I don't expect we'll ever run out of our quota. I think that's an area that we'll never hit. Other than that, I have no further things and able to answer any questions that you may have.
Jim, I have one question. So I see on the license and granted, we had one that was not issued by the deadline.
Correct.
So in that process, what happens?
So they've affirmed on their application that they will get their license issued within 180 days of the council granting. Otherwise, the application is considered surrendered. So at that point, that application is done and cannot be issued. They'd have to start over again and go through a full new application.
Okay. And the ones on here that are pending fees, or zoning or fees or any of that fun stuff, but are existing businesses where it was a new license for them because they bought the business, it had an existing license. Mm-hmm. Are they working on a provisional license, or do we go out and check and say, are they on a provisional license, 90 days, or is it like, we just don't talk about it?
Yeah, I don't believe we have any licenses right now that are operating on provisional that was granted before they came to ALRC. So at this point, any ones that are on there that all they have the fees holding up is they wouldn't need a provisional. They would just need to pay the fee and be granted the license right away.
Okay, and an example of one that is an existing bar and grill that has a lot of things outstanding, that is still open, still selling alcohol, should they be doing that right now?
If the current licensee is selling alcohol, that's fine. But if it's the people who've applied and not finished those steps yet, they should not be operating themselves and serving alcohol.
And would the current licensee then do they hand that back into us? Or what happens with that? It just seems like is there a date or something where these guys have to be fully taken over, or is it just kind of?
No, to answer your question, no, there's not really a date on there, unless they have some sort of agreement in their purchase or whatever, but that's not something that we ask for. But we typically, folks who are taking over someone else sign a transfer of ownership form that accompanies their application, and that just says that once the new folks are ready to get their license issued, at that point, the old license is considered surrendered. The only other case in which that current license would cease is if we get to the renewal period and that current licensee fails to renew while the new folks are still sort of getting their stuff in order to inherit then the location for their license.
But in the case where we're doing a business transfer, the licensee that is holding the active license, they should, their agent, they're responsible, their agent should be, is responsible for that liquor license.
Yeah, if there's alcohol service there, it should be happening on the current license, not on the pending license. I'm not sure if that answers your question. Because you can have an applicant going through the process while the current licensee is still operating and serving alcohol on their existing license.
Right, but I would expect them to be still part of that existing business. They're still part of their existing business, selling things under their responsibility, their liability, their license.
Yeah.
And as we're going through the process to sell the business, so a lot of, we have things where the sale is contingent on the new people getting the license.
Yep.
But if they sit for long periods of time and, because we have the 180 days and then we come back, if they sit on that and don't go through or pay their fees or do the building inspection, or that's not happening, and the other person, so that person who's still there, who may have sold the business, that license is still active in that spot until this one takes over. Who's responsible?
Yeah, if they've sold the business and that person who's currently licensed is no longer there to be responsible for the service of alcohol, there should not be service of alcohol happening at that location.
Okay. That's what I was just wondering when I was looking at the report and then when we extended to 180 days and just things that were going through my head, just trying to understand that better, I figured I'd ask here with everyone so that we could all kind of understand that process or any process gaps that we may want to look at filling. So yeah. Any other questions for Jim today? Seeing none, it's that time. Oh, let me turn your mic on.
Move to adjourn.
Any seconds?
Second.
And a hand by Ms. Farley. Any objections to adjourning? Seeing none. I adjourn the meeting of ALRC at 8:30 p.m. today. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Don't freeze on your way home.
Good night.